Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Wednesday's Writing Community Chat Show. And we are very happy to be back in the house. And Chris, I've had my job today.
Ooh, how did it feel?
I don't feel like I've got any superpowers just yet, but it's early days, so we'll see what happens.
Don't worry, mate. They'll come. They'll arrive, I'm sure.
It's great to be here, guys, honestly. And we've got a fantastic guest for you today. We really, really have. And just so you know, Chris, I am sporting our new hoodies that way. Our Writing Community Chat Show, Left Chris, Right Chris hoodies, which is very cool.
Very fetching.
It is. It is. People saying they love the intro. It reminds me of going to the movies.
Oh, do you remember when you could do that thing, going to the movies?
Yeah.
That was a good time.
Sneak in some confectionery because it's too expensive. Hey, you got some stories about the movies, Chris, because you used to work in them, right?
Yeah, the markup on the films, not the films, the popcorn is insane. Do not buy popcorn from an established cinema.
Coming from someone that used to work there, sporting.
Yeah, honestly, they would have like a 7-foot bag of popcorn and they would buy it on the invoice for like 40p and then it would sell for like £7 a bucket. So
wow,
that's how they make the money in cinemas and stay open. So I suppose if we want them open, we have to buy the popcorn. So
anyway,
maybe retract that statement.
Yeah, let's do our Beer Token book promotion sponsor, and which is fantastic. And if you're watching for the first time, it's a way for you guys to sponsor the show and support the show, keep it going by promoting your book, which is a great thing to do. And then we'll get the guest in, so be ready for that. So our Beer Token book promotion today is the Singularian Grimoire. Chris, can you read that? Grimoire.
Yeah.
Grimoire, the Singularian Grimoire anthologies. It's a collection of sci-fi fantasy short stories available in ebook and paperback. But this is the cool thing: it's exclusively on Patreon. And the reason that this person does exclusively on Patreon is because they do all the artwork themselves, and it's a lot of illustration, and it's fantastically done. And some great examples on the website and on the Patreon page that you can check out. And it's all done through there, and it's very cool because each month you get a free volume of this anthology, and it leads up to December of this year where you get the conclusion and all the clues tied together. So that's a very cool thing to step towards that. So if you do want to check that out, please check out patreon.com/Sandy Butchers, and that's going across the bottom of the screen right now. So please support the author that supports the show.
And do we have a book cover for that?
We do have a cover, and it's the cover for the anthology. So there it is at the top.
Nice. I mean, I love that idea. It's kind of like that weekly magazine idea where you slowly build a figure, or like a model or something out of it. You slowly get a bit of the story each week. I kind of like that. It's a good idea.
Yeah. And for you guys watching, what we're going to do is, after we discover this cool little thing on StreamYard about a giveaway, we'll do another giveaway today on the show, and we will be giving away our guest book. So if you want to be involved and win that book, all you have to do is hashtag in the comments the hashtag that should be out in the comments right now, which is hashtag storytime. So there it is in the chat, hashtag storytime. If you write that, give me a couple of minutes and we'll set that up, and we'll get in our guest. So Chris, are you ready for today's guest?
I am. I can't wait to speak to this person. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. I'm sure people are going to learn so much from our conversation that we're about to have. It's just going to be fantastic to speak to him, so let's get him on.
It is indeed. It's going to be very, very interesting, and you should have a notepad. If you haven't, go and get one, because you never know, you might pick up a lot of really helpful tips.
I've got my notepad ready to go.
Yeah, fantastic. So our guest today is widely acknowledged as the UK's foremost expert on story, which is amazing. And he's a former head of Channel 4 drama and controller of BBC Drama, working on award-winning programs like EastEnders, Life on Mars, and many more. The founder and head of BBC's Writers Academy. His book, Into the Woods, is the best-selling book on the subject in the UK at the moment, and it is required reading on all university writing degrees, which is incredible. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome guest John Yorke. Hello.
Hi. I can't live up to that build-up. I'm sorry.
It's fantastic to have you here, and we're so grateful, and I hope all is well.
Yeah, no, very good, thank you. Yeah, I apologise if we get invaded by a tiny child at some point, but it's offered to a new act of interesting dramatic challenges.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's something that we're all kind of used to on this show, and you know, the distractions of real life is something that we're all used to, especially as writers, and is something to be embraced, not hidden. I think so. No, not a problem.
Quite right.
Yeah. So you're well. How's things?
Yeah, it's mad as ever. Yeah, I mean, I guess we're lucky if we work in writing that you can carry on. Nothing's really different, is it? It's just slightly madder, but it's fine. I mean, you know, I'm writing, I'm beavering away, so I've been very lucky, a lot luckier than most people. I'm slightly dreading it going back to normal, to be honest. I quite like this.
It is. It's quite interesting how many writers we've had on the show, you know, and we talked about it when it first started happening in lockdown, and the majority of people were answering, you know, it's not really any different. So there will be a lot of people that are looking at this return to normality, if we can ever call it that, a bit unusually.
Sad but true, yeah. Sad.
Yeah. So it's fantastic to have you here, as we said, and there's a lot of knowledge and some questions the community have to ask, I'm sure. But what we do is to dig into a bit of background with our guest and find out how they kind of got into what they're into. And normally that's with writing a book, but obviously there are many reasons why you got into writing your book. So can we give a bit of context as to where you came to write your book and the influences behind that?
Yeah, of course. I was trying to remember, actually. It seemed like a long time ago. What happened was I was running Channel 4 Drama, which is a lovely job. But you don't make that much, you know, and also you're always working with brilliant writers. So while that's lovely, it's like someone compared it to, like, you know, working in a private hospital, whereas normal drama is an underfunded A&E department. And after about 2.5 years, I kind of thought, well, I quite fancy an underfunded A&E department. so BBC came to me and they offered me this really lovely job, which was to run independent drama commissioning, but at the same time to look after continuing drama, which is where I started. And I've always liked soap opera, to give it its pejorative term. You know, I've always thought at its best, it's just a lovely form of storytelling. It's very simple, it's very direct, but you do it well. It's incredibly moving and profound. So I thought, oh, that'd be fun. And I went back and I was really worried, because what had happened is the BBC had expanded their output massively. Casualty had been 8 episodes a year or something, suddenly went to 52 episodes a year. Holby, 16 episodes a year, suddenly went to 52 episodes a year. EastEnders went from 2 episodes a week to 3 episodes a week to 4 episodes a week really quickly. And then Doctors went from a show that ran for 3 months of the year to all year round, but all at the same time. And it was like, I mean, forgive it's a terrible analogy, but it was like Hitler going, oh, right, let's invade Russia. You know, like, you got 5 fronts going on already. And it's like, it's great, but disastrous as well, because unless you have the supply lines, you know, of writers, enough writers to do it, you end up in trouble, and we'd ended up in trouble. So I thought, oh, well, we better run a writing course. And so I thought I had to do it, and then I thought, oh, I better teach this. I don't know why I thought I could teach it, because I'd never analysed what I did. I just did it. It was always instinctive. You know, I had storyline for a long time, but never analysed it. So I thought, oh, I better read some books. And so I read all the usual suspects, Robert McKee, Sid Field and Christopher Vogler. And I started teaching that when I began. But I suddenly realised I was in this really glorious position, which every single thing I read, I could test live on air. Every idea. And the more I did that, the more I started to go, I'm not sure these books are right. You know, like, I mean, and that's not to knock them, because they're full of really interesting things. But, you know, I started digging a bit deeper and going, like, you know, so Robert McKee, what's the negation of the negation? And nobody could explain it to me, you know. And then I started to realize the middle of stories was really important, and there was nothing in Sid Field or Robert McKee about. So slowly I started to evolve, you know, like everything you copy. When you start, you copy, and then you slowly evolve and you work it out yourself. And so it really came out like that. Once I'd been in this really luxurious position of being able to evolve theories and test them out, I was fortunate enough, and I think the 4th or 5th year of the Writers Academy, one of the students turned out to be a former publisher at Penguin.
Wow.
And he said to me, he said, Rob Williams, who's now a very well-known writer, and he said to me, you should publish this, you should write this down. I said, that'd be ridiculous. So he kept pressurizing me, and then I wrote a chapter. It took about a year to write a chapter, and I sent it to him. And the next thing I know, what he'd done, this is so unfair and outrageous. He'd sent it to Penguin without telling me.
Wow.
Oh, no
and they rang me up and said, "Do you want to turn this into a book?" And it's like, that never happens. And it's also very unfair. But I had to write, although funny enough, when I met Penguin and they said to me, so this book, how you've written one chapter, how are you going to structure it? I said, I don't know.
I didn't know I had to.
Yeah. Exactly.
So when you started the Writers, Academy, and all this was going on, and all these new things were happening, you were testing these procedures. It's something that we look at now as something that's been there and it's established and it's well known. But back then, did you have to convince people to buy into it? How was that process like?
There was a degree of skepticism, and I think which also goes alongside structure, a degree of fear.
Yeah.
Well, that people are scared that structure is somehow kind of limiting. And will crush their individual voice. And there was quite a lot of that at the beginning. Plus, we're bringing lots of new writers in as well. My child is making a noise. So
don't worry, it's fine.
Let you know if I have to go and sort that out. Can you talk amongst yourselves for a minute? I'll just check he's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
no problem.
Please forgive me. Hang on 1 second. Right
yeah,
love it. I mean, for a start, guys, this is great having a little stop and think, thought time. But to be inventing the BBC Writers' Room and leading that in a time where, soap opera, which is incredible right now, it's in everyone's life. They rely on it every single day. And to be in that bloom and to create that and then take charge and decide that people are not doing what they're supposed to and going to teach them that is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of sets it up as like the Charles Xavier Academy of not X-Men, but writers. That's how I imagine it to be.
Oh.
I'm so sorry, I just left you to improvise.
No, we just, Chris just explained how you were like Charles Xavier.
Yeah, with loads of writers.
Slightly. Thank you, that's very flattering.
Yeah, so John, when you started it, what were you looking for in a writer? Because obviously you sort of knew you had the idea of growing your own and sort of helping bring on board a load of people that could help write with the BBC and work with you. But what would you look for in that initial spark of that person? Because obviously you could teach them an awful lot, but what was you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I worked out quite quickly that you can teach them structure, but teaching them a voice is a lot harder. So I think you'd read scripts and it didn't matter if the story wasn't great or the structure wasn't great. What you were looking for was just a line of dialogue or an image that made you go, wow, that's really special or interesting. Also, then it was authenticity was a big thing for me. One of the problems I felt with the soaps was they were becoming, they'd lost touch with their roots. And so I really wanted people who knew that world. So that was a big deal for me as well, is finding authenticity, because otherwise they become terribly patronizing and you start telling other people how to live a bit. So it was a combination of that and just to have an interesting take on the world. But what's interesting, if I look back now at all the writers who've been through it, and it's nearly 100 now, the two defining things is they're always really smart. They're very, very bright. Not necessarily university educated, but very bright. And also the sad truth is that most of them, they'll hate me for saying this, is they're quite damaged. There's a reason why they write. They need to write to make the world safe.
So how did you take those brilliant and amazing, unique individuals and then get them to work in what is essentially a big team?
Well, you needed people who wanted to do it. That was the thing, and loved it, and could love it. And then really you just kind of stick them in a pressure cooker environment and bash away until you either sink or swim, basically. I mean, there's a degree of fear involved because if it doesn't work, we'll part company. That's not me being vicious. That's just reality.
If it doesn't work,
exactly. But there's a degree of aspiration here for them. The great thing, and I still think the great thing about working on soaps and continuing drama was, if you do this, you'll see your work on air, and you'll see how good you are, and that's it's a wonderful feeling. But it's easy to forget how exciting it is to see your work on television. you know.
Were there any circumstances where you had tried and tested these theories, obviously, and got the instant reaction off air, and it had gone sort of not the way you wanted it to go? And how did you approach that and deal with that when, as you said, you were trying to build that trust in people that this would work?
Well, see, that's a really good question. What was interesting was, if I look back now, the very first course I taught, I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I knew kind of what an inciting incident was, and I knew the character had to have a desire. But beyond that, it was, you know, I was bullshitting, really. Like, I was reading it. I had Robert McKee under my desk, and I was like paraphrasing it. And I didnn't understand midpoints, I didn't understand crisis points. There was so much I had to learn. What's interesting is even now, that course are the most successful group of writers I've ever produced.
Wow.
And I think that tells you everything about structure, which is like, it comes from within, you know, and that was a really big revelation to me. It's not something imposed by Sid Field, you know, or Blake Snyder. Great as those things are, it's actually intrinsic. It's innate. You know, we've been telling stories like this since the very beginning. And if you give people enough room to practice, and importantly, give them the financial stability to do that for a year, so they don't have to worry about a job, you know, they can fail, get back on the horse, that starts to come out. The voice starts to come out, and you see that. And that was the amazing thing for me, was, you know, it was very quickly evolved from you need to follow these patterns to you need to hear that voice telling you this is the pattern stories form. And then I was hugely relieved to see, like, you know, because you know, at that time I was working with a lot of writers who were very anti-structure, like people like Russell T Davies and Jimmy McGovern and Tony Jordan. You know, it's all rubbish, and like, stop reading that crap. And you know, and they were lovely and brilliant. But what was lovely was I was able to read their scripts and go, yeah, but you know, your scripts are perfectly structured.
Yeah.
You know, and the big thing for me was actually Alan Plater, the late Alan Plater, who for years had railed against structure. Yeah, his proudest moment of his entire life was punching Sid Field in the face. And he came and gave a talk, and the student said, so, because by this time he was quite late on in his life, and the student said, how do you write Midsummer Murders? And he said, well, you know, the thing is, he said, the murder is always just before the first commercial break, and then just before the last commercial break, all hope is lost, and somebody really close to your central character dies. And I was going, Alan, that's structure.
Yeah.
Like, and it just is, you know. And it's just that's the thing for me, is it's a marvelous, miraculous thing, but it's born of the human mind. And once you get that, it's sort of,
I'm really interested in the process. As you mentioned, that soaps went from, you know, one show a week into, you know, producing more and more and more, to the point where they're daily now. You know, it's a massive commitment to people's lives to watch. But the story, obviously, back then would have been written slow time in comparison to now. How has the industry dealt with that? And did you have to adapt to what you were doing to you know, to introduce that, to be writing more full time, and the story arcs develop, you know, episode and over a series?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge challenge. I mean, I don't do it now, because I think you can only do it for a certain amount of time. You start to go slightly mad. Also, you sort of done it. You've done it. I mean, I remember 1,000 years ago, I was on some task force with the head of Grundy, who made Neighbours, and a guy from Brookside, and we were all charged with inventing a new soap. And someone said, okay, what has no one ever done before? And there was this long pause that went on for about 10 minutes. And then somebody said, we've never married dogs. And I was like, okay. And then there was a short pause, and then the guy from Neighbours said, I've married dogs.
Wow.
Done it. And you go like that, if you're not careful, that's the world you end up in.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, that's the reason I set up the course originally, was you've got to feed new talent in all the time. You've got to feed young, hungry people who were passionate about stuff, who were willing to work till 2 a.m. in the morning, et cetera, et cetera. And if you get that, it's an amazing. I mean, the lessons I learned on it, I storylined EastEnders single-handed for a year in 97, 96, something like that. And you know, it was horrible, but I learned more then that I use now than anything else I've ever done. Amazing to have that background.
So, John, you went from obviously writing and teaching to then producing this book even though you didn't plan to write it. But then the book was a huge success, and we've had quite a lot of established authors on the show, and multiple authors have said to us, "You've got to read John's book." Like, we've asked that, after the show, you've got to read Into the Woods. It's the book.
That's lovely. Thank you.
So how does that feel that you've gone from, being directly involved in a high pressured writing environment to teaching writing, and then now sort of teaching writing, but from a distance, because obviously you've written the book and people are still learning from your experiences. So how does that feel?
It feels lovely and slightly surreal, and I'm endlessly surprised. When people say they've read it, or whatever, it's kind of like, wow, it's very flattering. And my child is shouting again.
Yeah.
I think what's happening is he keeps turning his iPad off. He's watching stories.
Tempted to watch the show.
Yeah, go. I mean, stories.
Yeah,
go and sort it out.
Your X-Men analogy. This is so embarrassing.
No,
I will be right back. Have a look at my book.
Not a problem.
Yeah, and the bike. Which give me flashbacks.
Yeah. What's that?
Yeah. It's amazing. It already is.
No, I mean, maybe his child is watching the Writing Community Chat show and trying to turn him off. Just like,
this is rubbish. Get it off.
Yeah, why are you talking to these people, Dad?
Yeah, guys, we'll do the giveaway of the book very soon. And as you can hear from what Chris said, there's so many people that have said to us on the show, the authors, when we say, look, is there a book that you should recommend people to read? It is cropped up more than you would imagine, and more than anything else.
I actually had an author that was on the show read my book, and she got in touch with me afterwards. I'm not going to reveal who the author was, but she said, I really like your writing. I think you've got something, but I think you need to read John's book. And I was like, okay, I will go and read this book now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I picked it up, and obviously it's fantastic, and that's why we reached out to him, got him on the show.
Do you know what, Chris? I really like this segment of the show. It should be a new one, and I'm going to get a buzzer that'll pop up on the screen, and it's a timeout for the guest, so they can just disappear, and we'll have a thought chat, and then they can come back.
Yeah, definitely, it works.
He was unhappy with the narrative arc of Peppa Pig. He was. He felt there was no fourth act.
Who is happy with that? I mean, let's not get into that anyway.
Yeah, sorry, I'm so sorry. That's so awful.
No, don't worry about it at all. We had a great time. At least he's not watching the show and trying to turn you off.
Yeah, I'll give him a couple of years till he does that. But, I know your question was really lovely, and I don't make as much TV now. I still do a bit, but the joy I used to get from making TV programs, I actually get from that now. You kind of if you meet a writer and they said that really helped me solve. That's just lovely.
Are you very critical of story? Do you watch a lot of TV now, and do you get very critical of watching something and think, because that's not how it should be?
A little, yeah, a bit. But I would have been like that anyway, because I'm just always been like that. But it was interesting. Is like for a long time, what I did was, when I was working this all out, because it took about 6 years for everything. I mean, not every day, but just I used to just go to the cinema with a stopwatch and sit there and time everything and make notes. And I mean, it's no wonder I got married very late, because it was like it's so sad. I'm working it out and then being very passionate. That doesn't work. Why doesn't that work? Yeah, in fact, one of the exercises I give people now is that fix this film. My favorite at the moment is an old Carol Reed film, The Fallen Idol, which is like 90 minutes of genius and then 5 minutes of the worst ending ever.
Oh no!
And you kind of go, okay, fix it. It's a great exercise to do. It's like, years ago, I was very lucky. I was invited to go and work on Buffy the Vampire Slayer for a month. And while I was there, all the writers in the room, who at that time, they were all older than me, they were obsessed with fixing Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. That's all they did in their spare time. They literally were rebeating it out. They did it for a month. And it's that. It's the geek in all of us, isn't it? The storytelling.
So you talked about reflecting back on certain things and having the joy, coming from other places now that you didn't expect. With your writers' room, there's been Academy, there's been stories and people who've gone on to create their own works. Killing Eve was in there, and The Crown, things like this. How does that feel to see people have worked with you and kind of understood what your story was and then gone on to make their own?
Oh, it's great. I mean, it's the best thing. It just proves it sort of works. And not because I mean, I think it's important. It's easy to take too much credit for this. I think what's interesting is if you give writers the room to fail, if you give them a year, which is basically what. So when I came back from Channel 4, I looked at the average rate of new writers surviving, and it was like 92% of new writers were sacked.
Wow.
On the first draft, and I just thought that's appalling, that casualty rate. And so and then they'll realize, it takes 3 or 4 scripts to work out how to do it. So if you can give them a safety net, they'll work it out. And I think that's what the BBC should be doing. They should be investing in new talent, original voices, and give them a safety net to work it out. And so that's lovely. And yeah, I mean, every week you go, wow, it's another green light, which is fantastic. But it's because the BBC gave them the space. As I said, the first year I taught them terribly, and they just worked it out themselves. They just do. If you practice, you just get it.
So let's talk about the book very quickly before we move on to perhaps what could be coming up and what your story is about the moment. Sure. Into the Woods has been, praised massively and talked about to us plenty of times. And I mentioned at the start of the show, it's been, it's in pretty much every university when it comes to writing. So how was the process for you making that book? And did you ever expect it? Obviously, it was kind of thrown into the mix by someone else, but did you ever expect it to have the success it has had?
That's a good question. Writing it took a long time. It took a long time because so I had that conversation with Penguin, who very said we would do we'll fund this, which is very good of them. But you need to tell us how it's structured. And I said, I don't know how it's structured. And my editor, lovely woman called Helen Comfort, who just said this to me. It's like, I'm going to sound really stupid when I say this. She said, "Why don't you structure it according to your theory?" Oh yeah. So it's so obvious. Go, okay, and so that's what we did. And once I had that, I just did it in weekends, all getting up really early and late. And then when to finish the first draft, I went and stayed in a place I knew well near Cork in Ireland, and just overlooking the sea, which is it's one of the happiest weeks of my life. When all the hard work's done and you're just racing to the finish line, you can see it, and then you can go and sit in an Irish pub and drink a pint of Guinness.
Sounds fantastic.
Just lovely. So that was all very painless, actually. I mean, it's not a normal story. I was very lucky, and because of Rob, who was the editor, that was incredibly fortuitous. So yeah.
So John, for anyone who's watching that has not read your book yet and not seen it or wants to pick it up, can you give us a little taste, a little flavour of what it's about without obviously giving the whole theory away?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, it's okay. So the fundamental problem, if you want to boil down the problem with 90% of screenwriting books, is they observe a shape, but they do not tell you why it exists. And so, and a really interesting moment of this is like when I was researching, I thought I need to talk to some professionals. So I went to talk to, amongst others, a guy called Professor John Mullen at the University of London, and about story structure, narrative structure, because I knew it had to be about more than films. It had to be books. If there is a narrative shape, it's got to apply to all of them. Because film is just a method of consumption. And I said, "What do you think of Robert McKee?" And he said, he smiled, a benign smile, and he said, "Well, it's great, but he wouldn't graduate. He'd fail." And I go, "Really?" And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because he doesn't prove it." The golden rule of student dissertations is proof. You have to prove it. And that was where sort of like, oh. So what McKee and Sid Field are doing, and this is not to belittle them because there's huge value there. Huge value is they're looking out of the window and going, "Oh, look, the sun goes around the earth." It's observation, but that's not empirical reasoning. That's not logical. It just looks like that. And so for me, what was important was the why. Why does structure exist? And that was fortunately where the gap was, because no one had really done that before. And so if in a nutshell, this is a book about, it's the history, it's two things. It's why structure exists, but also I've structured it so it's the evolution of the understanding of structure. because that's really fascinating, because you can go all the way back to 16th, 17th century and read stuff about inciting incidents. It's fascinating. And so I used that to illustrate, where we are now. So it's, if you want to know anything about structure, hopefully everything you've ever needed to know about structure is in there. But it explains it so it's not an enemy. So structure is your friend.
Brilliant.
Love it.
You sparked off a bit of a debate now about Jar Jar Binks needing to be put down, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sure that was discussed at the time.
We've got a couple of staple questions that we like to ask before we get some questions from the community. Chris, do you want to start off?
Yeah, so the first of the staple questions is, if you could take anybody else's fictional character and use them in your own capacity, which character would that be and why?
God, I was thinking about this earlier, and do you know the character I've been obsessed by all my life is Pinky from Brighton Rock. Richard Attenborough played him when he was like 21 or something. He's the most vicious, nasty, evil Catholic gangster in history. He's deeply sick of it, and it's Richard Attenborough's finest performance, because we all think Richard Attenborough is really lovely and nice, but it's so chilling and dark and disturbing. From Graham Greene's novel, and I would do the further adventures of Pinky's gang.
Oh, nice!
The racetrack gangs of Brighton in the 1930s. What an extraordinary world!
Yeah.
So
good answer.
Somebody will nick that now, won't they?
Yeah. See on the screen next year.
Either that or Graham Greene's estate will be like, can you do that, John? Because we would like you to.
Nice. I suspect it's very unlikely Graham Greene's estate would ever do that to anybody, but it's a nice idea.
Yeah,
definitely.
Another question we have is, if you could change the ending to anything, it's normally literature, books, but we'll open this to TV and film, of course.
Thanks.
If you could change the ending to anything, what would you change the ending to and why?
Oh, I only ever remember the books with good endings, but I did come up with an answer for this. And the answer is a TV show, and this is people at this point make people very angry, I suspect. I think the ending of Breaking Bad is wrong.
Okay.
And I mean, it's great and satisfying, and nobody ever says that. They always say that the ending of Lost is wrong, which is true as well.
Yeah.
But so I'll tell you why. I'll make an argument, and people can feel free to disagree with me. Of course, please disagree with me. Breaking Bad is Macbeth. It's the same story, and it is a journey from good to evil. I always say, I said in the book, the fascinating thing about Breaking Bad is each season of Breaking Bad is a direct mirror of each act of Macbeth.
You've literally just blown my mind, John. I've never considered that before, and now, as soon as you said it, I was like, yep.
It's Mr. Chips to Scarface, but in medieval Scotland. It's like it's great. And I mean, Macbeth is my favourite play. It is just the perfect play. And the genius of it is, it's a good man who becomes a monster. Exactly the same with Godfather, which is very, very, very similar as well. It's a story of a man who loses his soul. I think that last couple of episodes of Breaking Bad are a kind of redemption for him. He's the good guy killing the bad guys. And I think that's wrong. I think he should lose his soul. I think he should die in a pit of fire, murdered by the good guys, for all the terrible things he's done. That, to me, is the truthful ending of Breaking Bad. I thought it was, I mean, well, I'll take my hat, it's a work of genius, so I'm not going to knock it. I bowed down before it, but if I was in the writer's room, I would be arguing as they drag me out, putting on my straitjacket. No, that's wrong. It's like, he needs to be evil, fully evil.
Interesting.
I mean, I love that for two reasons. One, I completely agree with you now that you've said it. I think that would make a much better ending. And two, it's given me a way in for Macbeth to teach my students in the future. Do you know Breaking Bad? Yeah, I'm going to. Yeah.
And The Godfather, funny enough, I watched The Godfather, all three of them last week for the first time in 10 years. I mean, they're still extraordinary films, but again, it's so close to Macbeth. The good soldier going bad. And he loses his soul rather than his life, but that, by the time he gets to the end of part 2 and he kills Frodo, it's just like, that's the ending of Breaking Bad. It's almost like he has to kill Skylar or his son. That would work for me.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
It's some interesting series that I've watched. I mean, have you seen Sons of Anarchy?
Not all of it, but a few of them, yeah.
Okay, well, the ending to that could be debatable, but The Walking Dead's coming to a conclusion right now, and that is going to be an ending I'm probably going to be disappointed by, having committed to it.
The Walking Dead, what, that you've killed all the zombies?
Well, do you know, it's something that's been on for so long, but it's like they've a perfect structure of dragging things out. I kind of the right or wrong way, I don't know, but I'm sure
you never know if they get endings wrong. They do sometimes bring shows back, which they're doing with Dexter. So I'm happy.
No, that's great. You give them a second chance. That's a really good thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. We've got one more sort of staple question, and it's a bit morbid. So you're on your you're on your deathbed, and you're looking back at your writing career.
Yeah.
What would you be happy with? What is success to you?
Yeah, if I died tomorrow, I'd be quite happy. You know, I mean, my child might be a bit pissed off at the moment.
On the plus, our ratings will go through the roof.
Yeah, well, there is that. Do you know what? There's a few things. I mean, the thing that will probably be on my tombstone, I suspect, is EastEnders. You're not my mother. Yes, I am. You know, that's the bit that. I mean, I don't know if they directly associate it with me, but that was me. Oh no, it's Tony Jordan, to be honest, and I'm inordinately proud of that still, because it's kind of, I mean, all Tony, not me, but it's perfect.
Yeah,
you know, it's just a lovely, perfect TV moment. You know, there's a few things, but you know, most of them are fairly modest and small. And tiny. I'm amazed. I'm proud of the fact. Just, you know, TV is a brutal, horrible world, and I was amazed I've survived that long. I'm quite proud of that.
So, John, how is that process? Obviously, you sat there in the room and you write that line, that, you know, the famous line that you just mentioned. I was going to do an accent.
Yeah, feel free. I want to hear it.
Yeah, where she goes, "You're not my mother." Yes, I am. That was my best impression. Probably failed, but yeah. So you write these amazing lines, and then you hand them over, presumably to the actors. Do you see that then, or do you have to wait for it to air?
It depends. It depends on what you're working on. I mean, I've written stuff I've never seen. Quite often, I don't really like watching stuff I've written. I find it slightly uncomfortable, and because you're always sitting there going, "Oh, it could be. I'm sure it could be better." So it depends what kind of show I'm working on. I mean, I'm actually doing something in the Middle East now that is a fun thing to do, but I'll never be able to watch it because it's in Arabic and I don't speak Arabic. So you know, I could probably work it out from the pictures, I guess. But no, I think it's amazing television is ever good at all, because basically once it leaves your desk, almost everything that can go wrong should go wrong. You know, the idea that extraordinary moment where a show actually is improved by bringing more and more people and more diverse into it, it's very rare, because the chemistry has to be so right and so perfect. There's so many things. You know, you can have a great show and one bit of casting can kill it. So when everything goes well, that's extraordinary. You know, it's like, and brings the writer's vision alive, or understands the writer's vision sometimes in a way the writer didn't really understand it themselves, which is a lovely thing as well. You know, but I don't think there's any rules about this. You know, it's just tell great stories and hopefully they get made and people fall in love with them. That's what you want, isn't it?
Brilliant.
Sounds great. Right, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a new family member, and this is something we do, John, where someone on Twitter that's followed us doesn't have much of a following. We give them a bit of a shout out on Twitter. We send them a GIF. Do you know what a GIF is?
Yeah,
animated GIF. Okay, so we'll play a little intro. We'll pop up on screen who this person is, and if you can think of a GIF, and it can be any GIF whatsoever, we will then find out who that person is and send it to them.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Okay, so this person is AM. That's another great name I can't pronounce. Radial Escu. Twitter's a good one for you, Chris. At AMR capitals ADULESCU1. Her bio says new writer, certified bookworm, advertising professional, hopeful dreamer, passionate traveler, cat lover, and life enthusiast. And she has 29 followers.
Hello.
So, yeah, if you guys are watching, can you please get on Twitter and we'll send them a GIF. John, what GIF should we send that person?
Oh, how am I supposed to choose?
It can be any topic or any theme, whatever you like.
Well, it's got to have a cat in it, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, we have so many cat requests. Okay,
well, she's a cat lover.
Cat's drowning.
Yes,
cat's drowning.
Much better. So guys, if you could find the drowning cat, no, just a cat would be fine.
Cat drowning. I'm loving that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Chris, I actually don't have my phone. I don't know where he's gone.
This is the first.
This is the first. Normally, this is the bit where I type the person's name in and find the GIF. I'm definitely going to do it, but I don't know where my phone is. So somebody else is going to have to do it on my behalf.
It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
Anyway, while we're doing that, John, this is a question we like to ask. Is there an author that you're really into that you could recommend for people to have a look at?
Well, the book I'm reading at the moment by Bernardine Evaristo, which won the Booker Prize this year. It's not the most original choice. I think is extraordinary. I think she's just brilliant. She just tells great. I thought it would be really hard and quite worthy, which is not my cup of tea nowadays. But actually, it's just a joyous exploration of, life in the UK and the diaspora over the last 30, 40 years. It's an amazing book, so I thoroughly recommend that. But I've mentioned him once already. But the person who really got me into literature was Graham Greene. So everything by Graham Greene, in particular, The End of the Affair, is the saddest love story ever written. Just amazing.
Excellent. Right, what we're going to do is we are going to do the giveaway right now, and then we'll have the questions from the community finish off the show. So we've had 7 entries. If you're going to be very, very quick on the chat and hashtag storytime, if you haven't done it already, you can get in there very quickly. But we're going to press the draw button, and then we will be gifting a copy of Into the Woods from John to someone on the show. So you've had enough time. 7 draws. Off we go. Chris, ready?
Let's go.
Let's go.
Spin that wheel.
And every time we're in the mix, I don't know why. So if we win, we'll just redo it. So we have a winner in a few seconds, and that is Morningstar 0274. Congratulations to you. We'll send you a copy of John's ebook. Fantastic.
Congratulations.
Great. So we got some questions from the community, and let's get into them if I can find them. Okay.
Oh, Chris, where's the video? Don't sell short.
Oh, you love a video, Chris.
Come on, the show's about structure, Chris. We're nothing without structure.
Yeah. This was in response to earlier, but I guess it's a question. Life says, "Can you fix Star Wars?" Question mark.
Well, I couldn't fix the Phantom Menace. I mean, no. I mean, the Phantom Menace is beyond salvation. But the interesting thing about the original Star Wars: A New Hope is obviously, if it was following the rules of fairy tale structure, Luke should be married to Princess Leia. That's what should happen. But obviously, he can't because it's illegal. So I know what and it's always puzzled me. Like the original Star Wars is a fantastically sexless film, isn't it? It's completely stripped of any red pumping blood whatsoever, and I often wonder why that may be one of the reasons why it's so successful, because it appeals to any age, and that's a fascinating lesson. I don't know if it was intentional.
So, John, if Lucasfilms or Disney got in touch with you and said, "You know what, John, you can do whatever you want with Star Wars," what would you do with it? Oh,
well, the last trilogy was just okay, wasn't it? It was, but it's really interesting. It's like, I mean, I'm not a big Star Wars geek, but I've seen them all, and it's really telling. If you ask me to tell you the story of the last 3 films, I can't.
Yeah,
I actually can't tell you what it is. I have no idea. It's full of lovely bits and moments, and but it's very disjointed. There's no coherence to it. you don't even know what you're rooting for. Nothing really makes sense. So if it was me, I'd kind of I'd leave it 20 years and go back and do the whole lot again.
Yeah.
Or just go do what they are doing, which is go to a different time in the same galaxy with all new characters.
John,
sorry.
No, I was going to say we used to ask a question and we stopped asking it because it was a bit controversial because this was a Chris versus Chris question. But I think you are probably one of the most qualified people to answer this question. Who is a better villain, Darth Maul or Kylo Ren?
Well, I'm going to say Kylo Ren.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Because he's the first one who pops into my mind and I can see him. And that's the kind of thing I go on. It's like very clear. And
exactly, Chris. He's not memorable.
And he's interesting because he's conflicted. And I think that gives him a depth that a lot of the others don't quite. I'm really not endearing myself to you, Chris, am I, Lizzie? You're looking very grumpy.
I'm
like you're going to take
because...
me outside afterwards and beat me up.
No, the double lightsaber wins it for me every day.
Yeah, but that's not a story, is it? I mean,
no, but Kylo Ren is a big baby.
Yeah, that's true. I've got some sympathy for that.
Yeah, but the super martial arts guy just got beat quite easily by
Yeah,
Ewan
I mean,
McGregor,
John is right. He is the master. So if John says Kylo Ren, then Kylo Ren.
Apparently, we're still on Star Wars. Another question from Life will ask it because it's there. If we were asking a question, I want to know what side is John on: to revise Jar Jar or not to revise Jar Jar? I mean, surely not.
Well, if he was problematic then, he's far more problematic now. So yeah, revise or remove.
Remove. Anya says, question based on this, how would you have the Dexter reboot ideally be about? What path would Dexter take? Any ideas on that, Chris?
Are you asking me or John?
Yeah, both. Anyone with an idea?
Because I'm not a Dexter expert, to be honest. I mean, I like it, but...
Yeah, I mean, I would like him to go out in a... similar to what John was saying before about Macbeth, in a really vicious way, to heading on his boat towards a storm. It was not fun, and I think that's why they're doing it again. And I'm hoping that that's the type of Dexter we're going to see this time around. I think he's just going to go all out and die in a blaze of glory.
Just a more death. Yeah, definitely. So in terms of writers and people watching this that are writing books and maybe for the first time or have written for a while and they're still trying to figure things out, have you got any tips on story that perhaps that we could take as writers that would be useful?
Sure, if they're useful. I mean, I can tell you what works for me, which is and somebody else. I mean, actually, there's a brilliant interview with a guy from The Simpsons, Schwarzenberger, in the New Yorker recently, and he just said, just write any old crap down, basically.
Yeah.
Get the first draft down, right? It doesn't matter. And I think, for me, that realization, because for a long time everything had to be perfect. You couldn't write the word unless it was perfect, and then I said, "Oh, that's crazy." So now I just placeholder. So then I can look back and see the whole thing. That's really useful. But the big thing for me, one of the big breakthroughs for me was thinking of a story like a triangle. So you have the relationship between the inciting incident, which is the problem character has to solve, the midpoint, which is the lesson they learn to solve it, and the crisis point, which is do they have the strength to apply that. So that triangle is brilliant to have in your head, because if you know two of those, you can work out the third. Just triangulate it, and that allows you to work out what the structure is, what should happen, will give you a guide. So those kind of things are really, really incredibly helpful.
Would you look at that as for individual characters and the whole story?
Yeah. You can do it for both, but I mean, it's like if you look at The Godfather, it's like the inciting incident is his dad being shot. The midpoint is when he shoots the policeman and the copper, the policeman and the gangster, and the end is like, do I have the strength to kill everybody?
Yeah.
There's a very clear relationship of opposites in there, And once you realize that, this is the other thing, story is digital fundamentally. So like it's all about opposites. Everything is, all of Shakespeare is built on opposites. And once you realize that and you don't see that as a problem, but actually as a gift, then you can sweat too much about these things, or you can sweat too much about being original. Originality will come once you're allowing structure to help you. Originality doesn't come in smashing structure up for the sake of it.
So John, this is a bit of a strange curveball, I suppose, but what do you think the future of storytelling looks like?
Oh God, well it's like, what's the future of breathing? It's hopefully going to carry on. I like, because it's indispensable to us. I mean, I think what the lessons are really about technology. Technology changes the way we tell stories, and the big thing at the moment is obviously podcasting, which is huge. Like when people get the time to listen to these things, I have no idea, but it's absolutely massive, and it's a gift to a new form of long form storytelling. And I think like that's as revolutionary a way as catch up TV was. People forget the invention of the video cassette changed everything, the way you told stories, because suddenly you could go back and watch an old episode. When I was growing up, if you missed the first episode of a show, you could never see it again, ever. Like that's crazy now. And so all you got was procedurals, because it didn't matter if you missed a week. But then once catch-up TV came in particular, suddenly serial, everything changes, because technology changes, and technology allows you to tell stories in a different way. But the fundamental shape of everything from Shakespeare's globe to podcasting is identical. The shape is always identical. Technology just allows you to chop it up in different ways. And I think that's just going to carry on and go more and more and more. I think the only thing I'd say is, as I think Quibi proved, I don't think there's a huge appetite for tiny short form stories. They're not particularly satisfying. I think you get those just by reading Twitter.
Yeah, you can look at it like productions like Neil Gaiman's The Sandman audiobooks now. The category of actors going into those stories are just proof of how they are, working in the right way and producing enough income to fund those sort of things.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's about income, isn't it? It's like if you find a way to monetize this, and everything clicks into place. It's all about, in the end, it's all about money, unfortunately. But that's it. Like in the old days, the reason why we look back at old BBC Nights we go it's bad was because all drama had to be sort of lowest common denominator, because it had to get a big audience.
Yeah,
it was a terrestrial model. What Netflix did was like, oh no, we don't need to get a big audience. We can make this pay really well with very few people watching, and that has transformed telly, because you can be really niche.
So John, talking about appetite then, and do you fear as a writer that children's appetite for reading has, according to like statistics and stuff on the BBC, declined over the years? Do you fear that will impact the writing of stories, or do you think they'll get that storytelling diet from somewhere else, so we'll be fine?
God, that's a good question. I mean, you've got kids, so you'll know better than me. At the moment, my child is bewitched by, I'm going to talk about him, like he's bewitched by stories, and watching him is so instructive. I'm sure you see it. It's like, oh, that's what a story means. Well, literally he spends the day being Peppa Pig. You become the central character. That's what stories do. I don't think that appetite will ever die. I think, it would be a shame if it's not taught properly, but I suspect there's a lot of scare stuff about this. And children will find stories in their own way. I mean, when I was a kid, it was like, oh no, you can't read comics. They're not stories. And yet, of course they're stories. They're amazing stories. I mean, what now would be called graphic novels was then Tiger and Jag or The Mighty World of Marvel. Amazing storytelling, and I think so. I can't see it really being diminished. There will always be an appetite for that, and even people who don't do well academically can become the most amazing storytellers. Which is a lot of graphic artists found. Graphic novel artists.
Even as much as I guess one of the distractions that people probably are worried about is sort of gaming and PCs, computer games, tablets, phones. But the storylines in computer games these days are massively
it's
produced.
all narrative, and I think the hunger for narrative is like we need it. We need the world to be made safe through story, or we need to allow us to understand the world through story. So I think I can't imagine that could ever go.
So John, sorry, Chris. I've got a question that just cropped into my head. Obviously, we've lived through a pandemic for the last couple of years. From your point of view, how do you think soaps should tackle the pandemic? Do you think they should address it and maybe explore it, or do you think they should just completely leave it alone and let everyone forget about it?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm starting out of the loop now, so I don't even know what they are really doing at the moment. I think you are caught in whatever you do, you're going to get shouts at a bit. My hunch would be pandemic is not particularly dramatic. It doesn't build, so it seems to me you want to acknowledge it's there in the background, because otherwise you're in a completely different planet. But I'd be very worried about running stories about it, because they'll be dated. Because you're on a 6-month lead time anyway, so it would look very dated. You're probably in a year's time you could do a long COVID story, or
it's not going to be very appealing.
It doesn't lend itself to drama. It's very dull.
Yeah. There was a recent Michael Bay film out about COVID, Songbird, I think it was called.
Oh, right.
And it was like an advanced version, and you're exactly right, because it wasn't very dramatic in its sense. So they had all these underlying stories that were really nothing to do with the pandemic in its sense, but these characters and their own stories. So that's the way they got around that. But I'm not sure it's a very desired thing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to look at. The force of antagonism don't begin. If you're sensible, you don't catch it. I mean, you imagine Alien written like that. John Hurt's a bit poorly. He's having a lie down. It's not going to work, is it?
Yeah, amazing. Just one more question before we wrap up then, and I want to just see what your thoughts are on this. And there's been a lot of films recently that have been rebooted. I mean, Ghostbusters, and there's many others, and a lot of films are in massive series, like your Avengers and things like this. Do you think these are being done because of the money issue, like we spoke about, and the fact that they know they can release this film, whether the story is good or not, with big effects and reboots, just because the crowd will come in for that alone?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Marvel is the most extraordinary success story of modern film history. It's mind-boggling what they've done. It's just they're so good at it. And on one hand, I take my hat off because that's amazing. On our other hand, you think, well, are we crowding out? Everyone talks about, there was this golden age of cinema. It was Jack Nicholson in a room. I'm not entirely convinced that it's that damaging. You can still find wonderful films outside of the mainstream if you want to look at it. I mean, I'm obsessed with. There's an Iranian film director, Faradi, who is just brilliant. And his stories are both art house, but they would work in EastEnders as well. Amazing Romanian films like 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days, which are literally the most terrifying, frightening film I've ever seen. There's so much good stuff being made. Still, I think, I mean, apart from the pandemic, and we don't know what the long-term effect of that will be on cinema, it feels to me like narrative is I mean, it might be a good point to finish on. When I started in TV 30 years ago, we used to sit in the BBC and we said, like, hands up. We used to, let's count how many good writers there are in Britain. And we sat around in this room. And do you know the number we came to? The number we came to was 12. And if you did that now, the number would be in its hundreds. It's grown from what was effectively, because there were only 3 broadcasters then, it's grown from a cottage industry into this extraordinary, and the British are brilliant at it.
Amazing.
Really amazing. Like, we're so good at it.
So, John, just before we leave, what's the future got in store for you, and what can we look forward to from John's world?
That's a very good question. I am writing a sequel to Into the Woods. So over the last few years, I've been taking the principles of narrative in fiction and applying them outside of fiction into politics and broadcasting and just the way people interpret the world. So I'm beavering away on that quite slowly. And then I've got a few dramas in development. I'm still doing lots of lecturing You know, if anyone's interested, they can find me online. You know, so I love teaching, so I'll be doing that as well. I'm still doing the Writers Academy for the BBC. But no, I love writing the book, and I also love teaching because, you know, I mean, like you guys, every time you teach, you learn something yourself, don't you?
Yeah,
and that's
definitely.
brilliant. You know, I'd also like to get to the end of This Is Us before I die. I'm quite keen to see how they ended.
John, we can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing your story with us. It's been absolutely fantastic, and we really hope that people pick up your book, and I'm sure they will. And we will gift that book to the winner today, Lucifer. Lucky Star, Lucifer.
Lucifer.
Who was it? Lucky
Morning
Star. Morning Star. That's the one.
0724.
Yeah, that one. So thank you very much, guys, and we will see you on Friday. Please take care of yourselves and look after yourselves. And lots of respect coming in for the show, John. Fantastic. Thank you, guys.
It's been a pleasure.
We appreciate the time, and we will see you very soon. Thank you, guys.
Take care. Nice to see you.